I am on your side. I have come to face the demons.
It's here, a game that defined and sculpted an entire genre. When the big reveal came a while back that Blue Point had remade Demon's Souls, like many, I viewed the news with one eyebrow raised. After all, remakes, remasters and the likes are all too often just a high-res version of the original, a few kinks ironed out, or worse, just an emulated version of the original. But not Demon's Souls. No, this has been made entirely from the ground up, and it's something rather special. The challenge is back, and it's one hell of a launch title, but how does it fare? And before I go on, please consider dropping a like and or subscribing. Thanks. You probably sit in one of several camps on Souls games. You've seen them and just thought it looks too hard to be worth the effort, or you've tried one or more and were put off by the challenge, never to return, or you love them and the challenge that they present. Souls games are a special breed, and for an external dev to remake the game that set the standard and not only spawned the resulting Souls games, but inspired a slew of others is quite the gamble. If you're not overly familiar with Souls games, the basic premise is that of a dark fantasy world overrun by demons who want your soul, and you want theirs. So grab a weapon and get down to business. Business being killing the invaders with your sword, axe, fists, magic, club or anything else that you can get your paws on. If only it was so simple. Demon's Souls has many mechanics that drives it, and to view it as a game that looks great but is just too hard would do it a huge disservice. Part of the challenge comes from, as it does with most games, of not knowing its mechanics and rules. I'm no pro, but I've played these games since the first iteration, and bar DS2 and Sekiro, I have finished them all and played many hours, so perhaps not as hard for me or others with experience. You start off as a nameless warrior who set out to take on the darkness or the mist that is enveloping the world. You can choose from a preset base of several classes. The game is clever in this way. If you don't know it, you've already chosen your difficulty to a certain degree, as some are most certainly easier to start off with than others. From a sword-wielding, traditional armour-clad knight to perhaps a magic user, do not worry though. These are just starting templates, and you can, as you progress, create a hybrid if you wish, or perhaps just really focus on an archetype and go all in for that longsword-wielding maniac who's all brawn that you've always dreamed of. As you kill enemies, you absorb their souls. Their souls are a valuable resource which can be used to level up your individual stats. Read these carefully as they define your very build. Die, and you will drop all your souls up to that point. All enemies will respawn, and you will be booted back to your starting point. Never fear, you can regain them if you get back to where you died, but die again before you get to them, and you can say goodbye to them forever. The risk-reward is in place. The game can be played online or off, but playing online allows you to group up with others in certain areas or invade other players or be invaded, as well as read or leave handy messages for other players to see in their worlds, though be warned, others will leave misleading messages in the hope that you will die. They can be rated foul or fine, but again, particularly nefarious messages may garner a lot of positive praise. You have two forms, human and soul form. In human form, you have all of your HP, and if you die in a world, it will affect the tendency of that world, making it harder but unlocking events that would not happen in a lighter tendency. Conversely, fulfill certain requirements, such as defeating a boss, and the tendency will grow lighter, making the world easier, and again unlocking events not perhaps available in the darker ones. There's a lot more to this, and ways to mitigate it, but this isn't a guide, and I don't want to ruin it all. Also, bear in mind that when out in the world and in human form, you are susceptible to invaders, presuming that you're online, so you have been warned. And if they are cocky enough to attack you in the first place, they are usually skilled enough to kill you. The running and rather tired meme for all Souls games when anyone dares to even whisper that they are struggling to get past a certain point or boss is git good. And as tired as that is, there is some truth to it. And learning the game is part of the joy. Knowing where certain enemies lay in wait and what they are weak to is part of the process, and the game will punish those that do not learn from their mistakes. I would be lying if I said certain areas are not hard or bosses, and it's a big but, it's not as hard as you may first perceive. Demon Souls is much more than preparing to die or just plain difficult. It's many different things to many different players, and that's because it has so many layers and ways to play. Some just like the challenge of a simple playthrough as their favourite build, others may want to focus on PvP and be a complete pain in the arse to other players, invading their worlds and claiming their souls as their own. Some are speedrunners, getting through the game in record time, and some play through naked, in-game, not in real life, calm down, and just punch everything to death. And some attempt to complete the game by never getting hit, not once. The point is, the game presents you with a variety of worlds, enemies, weapons and spells, and says, here you go. And this is why the whole, oh, it's that hard game philosophy is not one that does it any justice. A lot of the enemies and situations can be trivialised with certain weapons, magic or strategies. It's up to you to learn these, or again read a guide I suppose. It's also a game that welcomes multiple playthroughs, not only via the New Game Plus, where once you've finished it lets you start all over again, the new game now harder, and continue to improve your current character, but to simply start a fresh game and try a totally different build. Your first playthrough, I suspect, will be a rather messy affair unless you just read a guide, as you work out all the systems in place. Some areas will crush you, as will a lot of the bosses, literally until you learn how to deal with them. It's been said many a time, but your death in Demon Souls is rarely unfair. It's your fault. You rushed. You didn't respect the enemy, you took on too many at once. I say rarely because there are a couple of instances that I felt were slightly unfair. The camera sometimes does not help, and locking onto enemies can be much of a hindrance than an aid in certain situations, so just be careful, or it might just see you down a pit to certain death. Though hey, perhaps that is my fault as I locked onto an enemy in a very precarious spot. The game looks fantastic. It supports 4K and runs at a very solid 60 frames per second. There's a cinematic mode that offers some more graphical flair and drops it to 30 frames, but it's not so much as a vast difference that you would bother when 60 feels so much better, and I'm more of a performance man. The redesigns are faithful to the old game and bring them up to modern standards in such a way that I'm truly in awe when I meet an old foe from all those years ago on the PS3. And sadly, I suppose, it's quite emotional in some parts to just how Bluepoint have captured the feel and the look of the game so well without sacrificing its core. The score has been re-recorded for the game as well, and it suits it so well. It sucks you into the world and feels organic. The voiceover has also been re-recorded with most of the original voice actors. It's attention to detail like this that really brings home how special this remake is, and it's something you just never really see. A true remake that is clearly a labour of love, and it not only honours its source material, it improves on it drastically, though purists may disagree. The last launch title that impressed me this much was probably Super Mario World on the SNES. To have come out the gate with this in hand is a massive feat and a huge win for Sony. There aren't many games on the PS5 as yet. This is more than enough to tide me over, however, until more come along. If you get your hands on a 5 and you're somehow wondering what titles to pick up, this should be at the top of your list. It was revolutionary back in the day, and the remake is just as important. Not only is it a very solid and polished game, but it's proof that remakes can be something truly special when in the right hands. Cheers.